I'd like to introduce the director of Invictus, Clint Eastwood. I will ask one question and I'll throw it open to you. There's my friends on the side. Morgan, with you first of all. You wanted to play Mandela for many years. You tried to get a lot more freedom onto screens for a long time. It didn't happen. How does it feel to finally play your friend on the big screen?
It feels rather terrific. This is a situation that was meant to be, meant to happen. And I know that it's a situation that was meant to happen because I got Clint directly.
Cool. Did you feel a lot of responsibility?
No.
Fair enough. Okay, questions? First one there in front row, and then the lady, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Eastwood, you're at an age when most of us would be taking life a little easier, yet you continue to make challenging movies, one after the other, and make some of the best movies that we see in any year. What is the driving force behind this for you? Why do you continue to work so much and so well?
Do you want to answer that,
you know, I just don't, age is, I've sort of planned on not working at this particular time in life, but nobody can plan on what they're going to do when you reach my age of 49, 39, whatever Jack Benny was. I just feel that I'm enjoying work more now than I ever have, or just as much, certainly. And I'm at an age where I can take on more challenges than I have in the past, because I know more. Of course, also at this age you can forget more, but I'm trying to avoid that. And I just enjoy it. I enjoy the process, and I enjoy making films from behind the camera equally as to that of being in front of the camera on all those years. And I have no real reason. I'm kind of vamping around now, but I don't. I just enjoy it. That's all. I've been lucky enough to work in a profession that I have really liked, and so I figure I'll just continue until somebody hits me over the head. Says, "Get out."
Matt, you always look very handy when you're fighting your other films. How does that compare to the game of rugby? And do you think the other players held back from rucking Matt Damon?
And the biggest reason being that it was Matt Damon's stunt double who was in there most of the time. I mean, look, anytime you're making a movie, it's all choreography, except for this game. It's really tough to choreograph. It's a bit more uncontrolled, and so a lot of the stuff that we shot was what we called free play, which was just letting these guys go, just nail each other, and then and then Clint captured that. So yeah, there was a lot of it. There was a whole physical challenge for me to get ready for the role, just because I was playing a very famous man who everybody knows, and so it's like any job. It's a magic trick, really. You kind of look at it and think about, okay, well, what can get me in trouble here, and what can really take people out of the movie? Because ultimately, your only job is to, if somebody doesn't believe you for even a moment, then you've failed at your job, and you're taking them out of the story. So you have to try and troubleshoot. When you're like a year away from doing it, okay, what can kind of land me in trouble here, and what do I have to solve? So Clint helped me out. I talked to him a lot about, Francois is a big guy, and I'm an average size guy. So I go, well, all right, well, people know what I look like, and they know what he looks like. how are we going to get around this? And you know, Clint said, well, I can, you know, maybe you won't look 6'4", but maybe people won't say, oh, he's 5'10". You know, maybe we can just get people to not ask the question, and if we, you know, the little tricks of putting the camera higher and framing me to look a little larger in the foreground, or little things, or, you know, a little insole in my shoe to give me another inch of height, you know, little things like that, and then obviously a lot of work in the gym and on the accent and stuff like that to try to be believable.
Can you get that guy there, please?
Yeah. Yes, for Mr. Eastwood, just following on from that question, I wonder from the filmmaker's point of view, what the particular challenge were of putting on that end rugby match in comparison to a dramatic scene.
I didn't get that again.
What were the particular challenges of staging the rugby match in comparison to, say, dramatic scenes?
Oh,
Finding Jonah Lomu.
The rugby, I didn't grow up with rugby, but I went and saw a lot of, talked to a lot of people who played. I talked to the coach at the University of California, a rugby player named Jack Clark, and he kind of gave me a whole rundown of the game, and then I watched his practices and watched everything they did there, and then just kind of got ideas about it. Then when I got to South Africa, we had Chester and Francois, various people who had actually been in the game. So after you've talked to everybody, you kind of get a feeling of it. And I felt that we hired rugby players to play all the acting parts, except with the exception of Matt and one or two others. But they were all people that came up to the game real fast, and so we just had them play. And Chester Williams, who was our coach, he just would tell the players, say, let's just play proper rugby. And so they'd be hitting out there and hitting hard. And so it was our biggest challenge was to stay out of the way. And so we did. We got in there, and our camera crew is used to working on the fly, and that's the way we approached it.
Can we do you and then the lady?
There's also a question for Mr. Eastwood. After the great Gran Torino last year, I read very often that this will be your last time on screen, your last role. Please tell me that this is not true.
I said that back when we did $1 Million Baby. I said this would be the picture turned out to be a success, so I figured maybe this would be good to quit on top. Unlike most people who sort of drift down to the end, or like a prize fighter who fights one too many fights or something. But then when Gran Torino came along, it seemed like an interesting part. It was a man my age. I figured I wasn't stretching things that much, so I decided, yeah, I'll go ahead and give it another shot. I'm still say that. I mean, I might do 10 roles if some 10 roles, great roles came up, but I don't know how many great roles there are for a guy who's 38. and so you just don't know. So you just never say never, to quote advertising for another picture. But I had always planned when I started directing in 1970 that after a few years I'd get tired of looking at myself on the screen and say, well, okay, let's not do that anymore. But I just continued on. Every once in a while something pops up, and I'm not saying it won't happen again, but probably the odds get less as you set yourself for the roles that fit your age group.
I have a question for Mr. Clint Eastwood as well.
This I do bucket list too.
Did Mr. Mandela see the final film, and what was his reaction? And I'd also like to ask you if you were talking to him during making the film or before consulting with him.
Has Mandela seen the film?
I don't know. Yes. According to Mr. Freeman here, he has seen the film.
He has seen it.
And how did he react?
He smiled a lot and nodded. When I I first came on screen, he leaned over to me and he said, I know this fellow. So I think I got the impression that he wasn't embarrassed.
But did you consult him in any way before?
No, there's nothing. No, there isn't anything. I consulted films, you know, tapes on him, things like that. But I didn't go to him and say, you know, Mandela, how did you feel about this or that? Because, you know, he's 90 years old.
How well do you know him? Because you're friends.
How well do I know him?
How well do you know him?
Well, not that well.
Okay.
You know, I would run into him different places in the world over the years, but it's not like I would call him up in the middle of the night and say, you know, yo, Mandela, what's going on?
Okay, the gentleman now, please, a bit, yes, you.
Here's a follow-up question to Mr. Freeman. Having already played God, the natural progression is to move up to Nelson Mandela. How did you, if you weren't talking to him, how did you research it? And what was the most challenging aspect to you? Was it getting the posture, the accent?
The most challenging was the voice, accent, if you will. Everything else was easy, fell into place. I've been watching him for years. Once I got the notion that one of these days I would be playing him on screen, it became a question of just paying close attention to him every chance I got. You know? Whenever I was in his company or I see him on screen or anywhere, on television or whatever, just watch him as if one of these days I'm going to have to do that.
Okay, can we not have any flash photography during the press conference, please? You, please.
Mr. Eastwood, you did a fairly long apprenticeship at Universal, having to act in what they told you to do. Did you learn much out of that except how to survive?
You're referring to being at Universal for quite a few years?
Yes, sir.
Well, I was there twice. I was there in the 50s, and it was owned by a different company then, a different group of people. And I was just a contract player, and I didn't get to do much. I played about 13 bit parts that sometimes reappear on television. I slide under the table watching, but some of them were respectable. But yes, I learned a lot there. I went around. I spent most of my time because I wasn't employed a lot in the pictures, but I did have a paying job, so I went around to various sets all the time and watched people how they worked, watched directors how they worked. But it was a different company then, and then later I came back to them after doing the pictures with Sergio Leone. I came back and under different circumstances, and it was owned by MCA then, and it had been taken over that way, and I was playing leading role. It was a little bit different situation, but I learned a lot then too. I learned a lot every day, and even to this day, that's what goes back to the other question, why do you keep doing it? Because I always learn something every day. Every picture you learn something. You change too.
Thank you.
Can you have the guy with the glasses, and then if you could bring that to the front row, please.
Mr. Eastwood, in your leading roles, you play men with very few words and plenty of decisive action. In this, you are similar to Finnish men, my countrymen in Finland. I was just wondering, what is your connection to the white men of the north?
I need an interpreter for that. What was that?
What is your connection to the white men of the north?
Wild, very
wild men.
Wild men.
Oh, the white men of the north?
Yeah.
Oh, the wild men of the north. Quiet men of the north.
Do you have a connection?
I don't know. Connection, yes. I'm Northern European ancestry, so that's I'm English and Scots, and maybe a little Irish.
Have you been to Finland?
What was that?
Have you been to Finland?
Finland?
Yeah.
Yes, I have been to Finland. But I don't know if I'm Finnish or not. I didn't see anybody come up and claim me.
Front row.
One of us is on movie sets, we see directors making repeated. You are known as one who likes, it happens to very often that you make one scene, only one shot, and it's okay. It's also, it makes the film not so expensive, of course, but there must be another reason. And to Mr. Freeman and Mr. Damon, you have experience with a lot of directors. Could you tell us a little bit about the work with Clint Eastwood?
Well, I don't necessarily do a one take, but I'm always trying to do one take. And when that one take works, I'll print it. If it's the third take, I'll print that. But I don't, and I do. Sometimes I'll do quite a few setups, but I try to make the decision right at that time whether they're good, bad, or otherwise. Because I think if you start doing 30, 40 takes, usually you're lost somewhere and you don't quite know what you're looking for. And I like to think I know what I'm looking for, whether right or wrong.
What about the actors working with Clint?
I can't speak for those guys.
Well, you've worked with yourself before.
I take Clint to be my favorite director because I respond very well to the one or two take director, and he's the most consistent in that area. Directors, I think, like Clint says, who need 17 to 20 takes, I don't think they know what they want. And it certainly doesn't help the actor's sense of security, when he has to keep doing something over and over, and you don't know why you're doing it over and over. You say, well, what am I doing? What do you want? And the director goes, well, you're fine. We just, and they don't have a just. You know, now you're talking about wasting time. I'm not good about that.
Yeah, some people do they just collect a bunch of footage and then they edit it later, and that you definitely feel more protected when a director is moving on, when you actually feel something happen, so you know that they're watching intently. Like Coppola told me that Antonioni said to him, this is before the days of Video Village, that as a director you should stand right next to the camera, look with your naked eye, and if you see something that is real to you, you look up at your operator, and if the operator gives you the look like, yeah, I saw it too, then you print and you move on. And actually Clint was telling me about working with De Sica, on a 20-minute short film where he would stop him in the middle of a sentence, and Clint would say, well, shouldn't I finish the line? And he'd go, no, but we're going to be out of the shot by then. We're going to be on this shot over here. And so I know that your director is already, really cutting in camera is basically what Clint does. And I've worked with a few guys who do that, and it just gives you a real feeling of, as Morgan said, security, because you know that you're in very able hands, and the director is watching the movie kind of unfold, and you're getting what you need to get, and it doesn't have to take 17 hours to do it.
I've always felt that a lot of times when a person has to do 20 takes on something, that usually it's for one of two reasons. One, that they don't quite know what they're looking for, but also they don't know what the next setup is. And so they're just killing time, and they're utilizing the actors to kind of kill time till some great idea comes to them. So that becomes a bit of a problem. They sort of, not abusing the actors, because that's what they're there for, but it's abusing when you're leaving them at the time like that. As Morgan said, it does give you a sense of insecurity when I've worked with people like that, and it gives you a big insecurity when that happens. In the old days, a lot of people did it defensively because they didn't want to leave a lot of extra film, because they didn't want studio executives to come in and be able to recut their film and restructure everything. So they just would give them only what there's only one way to put it together. And so that was done back in in the 30s and 40s when the studio execs had a tremendous amount of power and directors just came in directly and got out. You didn't even stay and edit your film for the most part.
Have you said that, Mr.?
It was interesting to hear what Mr. Freeman was saying about having seen the movie with Nelson Mandela. I just wasn't clear on whether or not Mr. Eastwood and Mr. Damon had met Mandela. If so, what did you make of him? If not, have you had any contact with him regarding the movie?
I did meet him. We met him when we were there, and incidentally, Morgan did leave out that during the film, Mandela leaned over to him and said, "The guy playing Pienaar is fantastic." But we had a chance to meet him when we were in South Africa. I met him one time before when he had come to America about 5 years ago, and actually, I had about 10 minutes with him, and I was asked to bring my kids, which was a real thrill. And so my wife and I brought our 3 kids in and spent the time just watching him bounce our babies on his knees, and he was just absolutely wonderful with them, and we have wonderful pictures to prove it, and it was a big moment for our family, and the kids will obviously grow up knowing who he is, and someday they'll have a picture and see them being bounced on his knees, so it was a really special thing.
I want to know what you thought of.
Well, I met him, in fact, on the same occasion Matt did, and I thought he was equally as impressive as he was on film. I had seen him on newsreels and various film presentations over the years. He's an extremely charismatic man, and he has that $1 million smile when he walks in the room. Kind of everybody else wants to smile with him. But I never got a chance to talk with him very much. When we met him, he was 91 or whatever age he is now, 91 or 92. He also doesn't get out a lot, and but you just being around him, you kind of get a feeling. But I learned most of it just from studying various films, remembering all the moments in history when he was going through his post-apartheid election and all of that time, and also watching Mr. Freeman.
Okay, can you have the guy in the house, please? Oh, sorry, you need to do something with a microphone first. Can you just bear with us?
Talking too loud for you, kid?
Follow that.
Question for Mr. Eastwood. I just wondered, looking back over your career today, which of your films, as a director, was the biggest challenge for you to make, and why? And also, which of your acting performances you're most proud of?
What was the second part about?
Which acting performance you're most proud of?
I don't know. When you've done as many films as I've done, you just kind of keep going. If I never look back and think too much about them. I've done some work that I've been proud of, and I over the years. But which is my favorite? I don't know. I really don't know. I could say it's the last one. I've had moments. Little jumps in my career, like Unforgiven, possibly, but the last, and then along comes, I try something different. Letters of Iwo Jima was a film I liked doing a lot. I loved anything with Morgan Freeman, which is several times. Matt Damon, which I'm working with now for the second time. So I get a chance to work with people over again that I respect a lot, and that's whether you never know what's the favorite. A favorite performance, I don't know. That's up to me. Once the film's done, and once something's been performed, it's up to someone else to make a judgment on it. It has nothing to do with you. You can feel good. Maybe you had a good time, or maybe you had a headache when you were making it. Either way, sometimes that leaves a lasting mark in your memory.
Rita from Finland, but I'm going to ask about the name of Finland. But first of all, thank you very much for this great movie. unbelievable. It was very, very, I was even every now and then crying when I was watching it, because thought your performance was so good. You're also the reason. But I would like to know, when you choose the subject, do you believe, do you trust in your instincts when you choose the subject about to do in a film? How do you choose it? And then you said that you've been in Finland. When was that?
I missed the last part of it. I missed
trusting your instincts.
Yeah, trusting the instincts. Yes, I know. I got that part. Yes, I do. I trust the instincts. But it's just a story that I liked, and it wasn't. People will say, "How do you feel about doing a picture about rugby?" It wasn't. I didn't approach it as a picture about rugby. We wanted to make the rugby very good because obviously that was an inspiration to Mr. Mandela to utilize this as an avenue to uniting his country. But I chose Mr. Freeman called me up and said, I got a really good script. He didn't even tell me it was about Nelson Mandela. So I read the script and I liked it very much. I've always admired Mr. Mandela, and I always admired, and I was amazed at reading it, the script and John Carlin's book about this incident, because it seems so creative. It's such a creative way to unify a country that was in really deep trouble on the brink of civil war. And Mr. Mandela had been in prison for quite a few years, so nobody knew what was going to happen there. But to come out with this kind of imagination, and I just thought this is something politicians around the world today could learn a lot from, is having a certain creativity and bringing people together with instead of just talking about it and then not doing it. He seemed to be a rather unique person, and it sounded like that was my reason for doing the picture. The rugby was exciting, and that was fun, and it was fun to have that in there. But if it had been Nelson Mandela and it had been a Texas Hold'em poker game, I suppose I still would have done it because I admire the man.
But have you been in Finland? When were you in Finland? Finland.
Enough of the Finnish question.
I'll be in Finland one day again. I've been to Finland though, and I liked it.
Mr. Eastwood, revenge and retribution have been recurrent themes in your career. Now you turn to forgiveness. Was there a change of heart or anything?
No, you should see Invictus too. Yeah.
Would you like to ask that? Well, it's about the revenge. There's always about forgiveness.
Are you going soft?
Change it up.
Dirty Harry out of the picture.
He reached his 40s. What can
I'm Dirty Harry never would never be forgiving like that. That's what makes Nelson Mandela a superior person. But obviously he had other pragmatic ideas too, as far as that were encouraging him. But he did believe in he needed the total population, as he states in the film, and he stated in real life. He needs every building block possible to build a nation, even sometimes people who have been your prior enemies.
Can we do you, please?
Mr. Eastwood, you're a product of the Great Depression, and yet with recent films like Iwo Gran Torino, and this one, taking the broader view of the one, does that suggest that you're less in love with the American dream than you might have been? And indeed, does this film have a particular relevance in the age of terror?
This particular Invictus?
Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, I was brought up during the Depression. Those were bad years, but you know, as a kid, you really don't know. You only know what's there at the time, and if somebody's feeding you beans and water, that's okay, because that's what you know. But if you get to know caviar, then eventually it's tough to go back. Yeah, it was a tough time, and I've learned a lot from that. But I've learned a lot from every age, and I love telling stories about that because it's part of your travel through life. Whether I have feelings about the American dream, I still think it's there. Yes, I think it's there for people who want to embrace it. I still think there's a great energy in the country when it wants to have it. And I think that inner energy does allow for entrepreneurial feelings or whatever a person wants to accomplish in life.
Okay, can we have you?
Hi, congratulations to all three of you on the Golden Globe nominations. And the Oscars are coming up. But just how important are these awards, concerning the film, to yourself personally? And on a personal note, what do you make of the QAs hosting these?
Well, awards are really the only reason to make movies. I know I speak for all three of us, but I thought Ricky Gervais was great. He was terrific. No, I think that's the point. It's the Golden Globes. I don't think it's supposed to be, it's not, the Kennedy Center honors. It's the Golden Globes. There were probably about 5% of the people there were sober sitting at the tables. I don't think you could be too irreverent. It kind of has that kind of roast feel. I don't know. It always had to me that it kind of seems like an irreverent kind of show. It's supposed to be fun.
And awards, they're just pats on the back. Main thing about awards in movies is that it's sort of an economic surge for film. If your movie gets nominated for any award, and it's this big splurge in the paper, nominated. So go see it again. Don't give up on it.
Well, they changed awards, and they changed it now. The statue goes to, and they don't say wins, because actually you don't really win. They're voted on awards. And so it's not like a person who's in a swimming meet or a track meet, you actually have to win the race. With an award, you just, people vote on it, and it's their idea, and they sometimes, you always got to remember when anybody gives you an award that it could be wrong.
Could be wrong.
So you just kind of have to keep that in mind, and then you go ahead and enjoy it. Enjoy it, like Rory says, it's a pat on the back, and great, you'll take it, and you move on.
But it is a good point, the economic point. There's a lot of money in. I remember a studio executive telling me years ago he greenlit a movie that cost $90 million. He was master and commander, and he was telling me, yeah, well, the difference between this movie being in profit or being a loss is whether or not we get a Best Picture nomination. Because it's a movie primarily about men, there are no women in it, so we automatically lose half the audience. But he broke the whole thing down for me and said, at that time anyway, 10 years ago, to be one of the 5 Best Picture nominations meant like $50 million in box office, because a lot of people would go, well, they'd look through the paper and go, well, which 5 films have been nominated? Most people don't see many more films than that in a year, but those would be the films they'd go see because they go, okay, well, these are the ones that are supposedly worth my time, so I'll go check this one out. So there is a huge part of it that does actually matter in the real world for our jobs, actually. Sorry to say.
In the movie, one of the big turning points for Peter is when he visits Robben Island. And I'd like to hear from all 3 of you, what impression did that make on you?
Well, it was as John Carlin, who's sitting right there, wrote in his book, and as it was written by Tony Peckerman's screenplay, and as it happened with Francois, who's sitting right back there. Francois might be a better person to answer this question, but I asked him exactly what he did, and holding his arms out, that was, I think, hopefully pretty much as it happened. There's a lot in the movie where obviously you're going to tell it. Story like this in 2 hours, you're going to be mashing characters together and taking some poetic license in a number of places, just right into the fact that you've only got 2 hours to tell the story. But that sequence, I think Francois said, is very, very close to how it happened.
Francois, do you want to comment?
watched the movie with my two boys in LA at the premiere, and the scene evolved where Matt walks into the cell. It is almost 100% exactly how it happened for me. I was the last guy to file in. The previous day, we'd just beat Australia with the favourites to win the World Cup, and we had a very good night out. We actually said to the guys to go and celebrate the victory, and the next day we went to Robben Island. And I've never been to Robben Island before. So I was the last guy to file past, and I walked into the cell, and I just got this enormous emotion that flowed over me. I touched the walls, and I looked outside of the bars, and then it dawned on me how unbelievably generous Nelson Mandela actually is, and his humility, because he sat there for 17 years, and he came out of that prison and he embraced everyone in South Africa. So when I watched the scene, and Matt played it incredibly well, I started crying. So my two boys, they 10 and 11, looked at me and said, "Daddy, are you okay? Daddy, are you fine? You're fine." That brought so many emotions to me. Right after that, actually, we walked into, there were still prisoners on the island then, Matt, and we walked into the mess hall where the prisoners were. And all the prisoners there were coloured prisoners, and they just, the roof lifted when the team walked in. And then I just realised how powerful Mandela is and was then, when he said to everybody in South Africa that he wanted them to support the Springboks, because if it wasn't for him, we would not have had the support of everyone in South Africa.
And how about you, Clint? How did you feel when you heard something else?
I'm looking at it very technically, so I didn't. I was crying for another reason. I was trying to figure out how to get the cameras in the building. But they, it's very emotional when you go into a little cell that doesn't even have a bathroom, a toilet in it, and it's got.
They got another movie coming in here.
There's a spirit, something's going on here. But it was a very. To think that a person spent 27 years of their life in there, and just cracking rocks out there, or digging in a salt mine out there is a little bit overwhelming. And to come out and be as open, as magnanimous, as forgiving as he did is almost impossible to fathom that. I in the spirit of Josie Wales and other films, I could have never been. Sorry about that.
The ghost should
never ask a question. Don't ask a question like that again, or this wall's coming down.
Josie. Okay, so he's been very patient with you.
A lot of sports people would argue that politics doesn't belong in sport. Invictus proves it's wrong, of course. Francois said, we're not just in the rugby league. Similar argument made about politics in cinema. Paul Greengrass, of course, said that films should not be disenfranchised from the national conversation. I wonder, I mean, these two are areas, wide areas coming to play in Invictus. I wonder, would you say, where you stand on these wider issues?
Well, Mandela himself talked about, I mean, there was a quote, John, I think at the beginning of the book, but there definitely was at the beginning of the script, there was a quote from Mandela talking about sport and its ability to unify people unlike anything else. So Mandela himself recognized this, and before John wrote the book, he went to see Mandela and said, I'm thinking of doing a book, and talking about the first year of your presidency around this, it's your life story, but then kind of told you this event, and Mandela lit up. I mean, it just said, yeah, that's a great idea. He said, yes, using that, he said, that's a wonderful idea for a book. And it is, by the way, it's a great book. So. But yeah, so in terms of, yes, using something, politics in sport, I think absolutely it's a vehicle. Mandela proved it with this event, I think.
Well, he also tells this great story, that was in the movie, about what happened when he was invited to Barcelona, the '92 Olympics. Now, if we talk about sports and politics, you only have to look to the Olympics to see that they do meld, they do come together, that sports can somehow ameliorate politics. I remember, what was it, '88? Sometime when we boycotted the Olympics because it was going to be held in Moscow. 80? That was a bad year. The Olympics didn't do well that year. So, and that is politics being the overriding factor in a sporting event. It doesn't work that way. It works the other way.
Also, there's the underdog factor that's always, the Springboks had not played in the international rugby contest there for a while because of Apartheid, and they were not favored to win at all. They were in the game because of one of the reasons they were in the game is because of they were the host nation, which gave them a pass there. So they got in, but they were the New Zealand team was considered extremely powerful, and so I don't think anybody in '95, and Francois can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that they were definitely going in as the underdog, and for the fact that Mr. Mandela became so engrossed in this and put so much of his political capital on the line for this team and for this result, it's almost like he was clairvoyant in some way, because this was and his assistant. Somebody's is that my stomach? His assistants keep telling him, and I guess that really happened, that he was wasting his time with this. This is such a long shot. Why would you do that? But he was obsessed with this. And we've seen politicians become obsessed with things, with certain things, but not sport as a rule.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I'm very sorry if you didn't get a question in. Please put your hands together. Clint Eastwood.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey